I didn't bring any cards, but I'll write it down for you.
Thank you. I didn't know.
Yeah, is this your personal YouTube or
what's that?
Is this your personal YouTube?
No, it's the Chicago Blockchain Project's live stream.
The USD training is because he does pretty much certified there. They have automotive AI which it costs. But I believe this scholarships available. And so your initial goal is to get majors on this so you can make it for you have the basic programming skills in the other languages. So you start from scratch.
And so the best way to get that.
Okay, that's hard though. Okay.
I haven't learned the programming language since I college. I did C++, Pascal, I don't even know, to be honest with you, if it's possible for me to go straight to you say AI, there's first question is actually what do you define as AI? Artificial intelligence is very wide. Are we talking about Netflix type of thing? If you watch movies, all of a sudden, Amazon says, hey, you bought this coffee, people bought this coffee, bought this and that. While we're talking about self-driving cars, they're two different.
Well, see, I'm glad you brought it up because I've been asked this question lately. Science is sort of like I mean, I know it probably doesn't sound, but that's kind of like.
Oh, that's the one.
I'll sit the Hyde chair. You know, it's all you.
Yeah.
But everybody made it.
That's my question.
So, I mean, I would say, for example, I'm not an engineer. Yeah, but I don't understand technically what's happening. Okay. I know everything from use cases, like in your case. Look at it from social perspective. You come on the project, you come up with funding for the project. Other funding State of Illinois, City of Chicago, you finding someone who can write a code line, build you a tool that you can use to apply to systems. It's probably way easier than other college kids that are people who are looking for departments of them. They don't understand the world yet. But understand the network, and they want to take it apart, and I didn't feel like I find the coder. Also that someone who understands the technology implications of this. So I think when you started the conversation, you said if you want to become whatever this is, when I say, you know, I think the Zero Lock program, what we talk about these kids, you know, I said, look, I can do that. I really want to you on the screen TV. Yeah. I mean, it looked like you were excited. Yeah, I don't know how to share Instagram too quickly, but it's in my read itself. I looked it up. I got competition on it. No. I made sure that I gave them. I mean, I know it's yours. I mean, I just, you know, so I don't have a problem with it. I just wanted to make sure. I mean, I didn't know anybody real about that. It blew my mind to see that. And they had some with the first panels. Typically, I didn't know anything like that. I'm just interested in sit down and show me. I mean, but it looks the same way as Facebook, so maybe, well, since I've been researching. And it's looked pretty good. My whole dragon send the IDs money, so you got to rewrite Hyde. Just regular margin, moderate. So it's a higher level value. Session where you I can figure it out without knowing. That was one of the things when I first. At the end of the day, I was looking for that. When you're passionate about something that's like emergency other different fighting a project, Bitcoin matters, and website has to be fighting on which it ICO analysis, which I have tried before as well. Like me, I get frustrated. It looks like a great event. They don't so to speak. There's nothing wrong with that. We're saying that when you're doing trade, try to figure out but somebody in here that looks like me, or am I going to deal with so yeah, but I mean that's social change. So just the social impact of that is a very, very crypto thing every morning. Say this yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Marijuana to his very specific goal. It's a non-unique, but you'd be surprised how many people I talk to about this social good crypto. I mean, I get into blockchain. It's like they say, that make money. That's so when somebody asked me, it was up to $15,000. That's like my day today. I was going to go back to him. Was that the side of the yeah, he was talking about some of the top back and everything. How do you do it? I'm Brian. How do you know that I'm also like a blockchain? Do I just have to look? Yeah. He's our guy. Yeah. He's supposed to be here, but he's not here yet. Okay. Are we talking or are we like,
We got all these things.
Right. He was ahead of himself. He didn't know. Job to tell him. Please not really want that conversation. Just so we can they're already yeah, these guys have already hit the market running. All right, everybody, we're gonna get started in 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Right. Exactly. Skip that whole build out. I think it's a adoption rate. I'll put our advances as a source. That's something like that. Plus, I know that the data is immutable. So, you know, at least I can say. So I'm also working on a publication that highlight the same. Had more diversity in the content articles. And it's not that I don't want anybody to like you or anything like that. It's that I want to yeah. Right, that would be helpful. Exactly. Right. Oh, okay. But I was talking about this. I'm going to look up for you. I stay here. I can talk about problems. So I'm there talking about inclusive he also claims that this is a claim. So I go talk to all the other mayors in the world. At the top 40 cities in the world for the same #1 challenge. And if you ask me, a little bit of a hammer of the problems and they this is why you really focus on some of the skills. If I can go to someone on the south side, someone on the side,
I know.
That way you didn't have to go to the right. Immediately. I've got a great library, you know, for all this stuff. I mean, I never hear it. And in exchange for the music you get in this ride, there used to be a lot of in addition to use our music that I have like putting credit in. And at the end of the video, I would put credits in my video, which when I was on Instagram, for example, I would always put the music credits and just use like a little mini movie type of because it kind of made it look like artists like trash. Like I had YouTube and I get used to holding the camera. You know, it's just something well, I mean, yeah, they have it. I mean, you know, my videos all look like professional. They don't look like I have the same considerations. So if I can say in exchange for your data, you get this free ride, that close enough to social justice.
Sit anywhere. Anywhere.
I'm not supposed to just talk to you, but
Hi, how are you? How you doing, Brian?
Joe,
Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry.
Hey, Jeremy, Brian. Nice to meet you.
So my crypto expo child is and the video is on the right hand side, not I kind of put a little bit of effort into it. But it's not YouTube stats, but it's not right. You guys have like 10,000 views. If I get 200 views, that's major. That recent graduate from high school is going to say, right now, so I have to show here. Yeah, it's they have their own app. All right. So I had a pleasure of seeing a vlogger say that the problem is that people are using like a format for like Instagram Live, Facebook Live, saying that all they're doing is.
I don't mean to interrupt everybody. How y'all doing today? How's everybody doing? All right, still like a good conversation going on. The purpose of this event, for you all who don't know me, my name is Hyde. I'm one of the co-creators of Southside Blockchain, along with Mr. Ron Davis, Mr. Taylor Jerry. Welcome for coming out this Saturday afternoon to Sip and Savor, local cafe here in the Hyde Park area. It's actually our second meetup, our July meetup, so thank you very much. Definitely like the community that we have here. I just want to start off with a few jobs that are hiring in the Chicago area. First off, Coinbase, they are looking for a market operations manager, somebody to lead the market operations team, supervise opening and closing the order books, manage market incidents, ensure daily operations process are completed. Secondly, Chicago Crypto Capital is looking for a cryptocurrency broker to basically help clients acquire cryptocurrency. Inside or outside sales, you don't have to have any experience in sales or brokerage. They will put the training for that. Lastly, IBM Blockchain and Distributed Ledger Technology solution for a technology architect. This is actually a mobile job, so if you're enjoy traveling, flying across the country, helping manage consultants, architects, develop technical solutions, solve business problems with blockchain and distributed ledger technology. So if people are looking into that, you know, websites like LinkedIn, different organizational websites, they have those job listings available. So now I'm going to turn it over to our other co-founder, Mr. Ron Dane. He'll introduce our guest speaker.
All right, thank you, Derek.
Well,
so thank everyone for coming out today. Southside Blockchain, our mission is to bring blockchain technology to the South Side, develop those conversations, learn about different use cases, And we don't focus on just economics, we focus on technology. We want to make sure that we educate and empower everyone to be able to make wise decisions as far as technology and help with the adoption of the technology. Whether you're Bitcoin Maximus, or Ethereum Maximus, or a Litecoin Maximus, we feel that there are so many protocols out there that can help with different use cases and help with our society to make things better. That we want to make sure that you're exposed to all of that. So our guest speaker today is Joe Grant. He's the co-founder of New Mobility Consultant, Bruce brother. And what they do is they work with distributed ledger technology to work on the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things is a catch-all phrase, which Joe will go into, but it's like technologies like smartphone technology, smart home technology, smart farm technology, so forth and so on. We use analytics, artificial intelligence in order to produce better outcomes, to be able to measure results of things. So Joe is going to let us know the things that he's working on as like new mobility. And what you guys may not know is that Joe is also an official advisor of IOTA. And IOTA is a distributed ledger cryptocurrency. They use Tango, they don't use blockchain, but it's distributed ledger technology. And I feel really grateful and thank you for your time today. So without any more, Joe Grant.
Thank you very much. Let me know if you can hear me okay. I have a pretty loud voice. First of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today about, Ron says, distributed ledger technology. So I have, from the very beginning, tried to push DLT over blockchain. Not only for details, why I think there's a difference in why we should discuss DLT. But before I start, again, my name is Joe Grant. Born and raised in Stuttgart, Germany. Been in Chicago the first like 8 months as a student. And I came back in 2002, left one more time, and now since 2015, I have my own business here in Chicago. And new mobility is our main focus. So mobility means connected cars, autonomous cars, or vehicles, so I should say drones, energy is included. Urban mobility, smart city, e-mobility, and the services connect all of those. So this is obviously a very hot topic. You hear about, testing. You hear about accidents all the time. And I'm a big believer in serendipity. Terrence and I talked a little bit about this. So growing up in Stuttgart, Germany, you grow up next to Mercedes, Bosch, Porsche, and all these car companies. And I thought I would be working for one of those companies. But in serendipity struck the first time, I ended up in IT. And in IT, I learned, mainframe, client server, to the cloud. And we all know these things these days, but most of us are old enough to remember all these evolutionary steps happening. And I really believe that the blockchain, a completely decentralized approach to the world, is that next revolution that we will remember one day that we were part of this. We will remember one day when this whole thing started. And so decentralization is an interesting component. And if you think back to how blockchain got started, whoever created it out of the financial meltdown. That was the initial idea of the folks to read the white paper, right? So the whole process of miners, the whole process of incenting people to help do all these things are all well and done. And the founders of the IOTA Foundation have been part of this crypto valley in Zug, Switzerland. They were miners themselves. They got involved in these things very, very early. And as they learned more and more about the space, they started seeing the Internet of Things as a very, very compelling opportunity. And when we talk about Internet of Things, just so we're all on the same page, what we talk about is the connection between the physical space and the cyber world. That's, for us, the Internet of Things. So anytime the physical world touches or interacts, and so the Internet of Things is literally every device that has electricity, including this smart light bulb, can and will be connected at one point in time. And this industry is growing. There will be billions, trillions of devices that are going to start connecting. We've seen some of it in our house already when the fridge talks to the shopping list and things like that. But we're going to go into an opportunity that is going way, way beyond that. And I'm going back to cars because the car, to us, is the ultimate IoT device. If you look at a 7 Series BMW or a Mercedes, it has up to 100 what we would consider PCs on board of the vehicle. All these computers make sure that, you know, ADAS runs, ABS runs, power steering runs, the radio runs, all these kinds of things. But these computers are not connected by state-of-the-art technology. If I take Tesla out of the equation for a second, but they're connected via AD's technology. And so if I want to get data off the vehicle, in the old days, the vehicle has to go into the garage, I connect it to a connector, and I can take a limited amount of data off the vehicle. On the other hand, if you look at Tesla, what they do is what's called over-the-air updates. So they have the car connected in the internet, they can push a firmware update into the vehicle, things like that. But they can do that also because the architecture inside the vehicle is such that they can do this without putting the driver in harm's way. And so we see already technology gaps between the established players and the new players. And what happens at the moment is there's not an OEM, an original equipment manufacturer, the Fords, the Chryslers, or a tier one, so the Bosches, the Continentals of the world, that is not looking at blockchain, super ledger technology, I should say. So everyone sees this as a huge opportunity, but no one has yet come to a part of production because we all know this is early stages. And so as the founders of the IOTA Foundation saw this, they see that there's a couple of things that are holding the Internet of Things back from a blockchain perspective, because the blockchain was built for IoT. And so what are the issues? For example, the delay in the transaction confirmation. For example, the mining on the transaction. I cannot have a microtransaction where this light bulb pays this light bulb if the transaction costs me $28 or if it costs me $20, right? So there's already a limit on the business model. And so what they said is we have to find a decentralized, so we take the best on the blockchain, a immutable, again, best of the blockchain way that is highly scalable, meaning the more devices that are on this thing, the faster it has to go, which is counterproductive on physics. Usually the more things you throw in something, it goes slower, and it has to be transaction fee free. And so they went out 4 years ago, around about, and you know, this at the time was a very small ICO that they did. They wanted to raise some money just to finance the project. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. And one of the things that I like about it is even the founders had to buy into the ICO. So this was not like we're holding back a certain amount of coins. Everyone put their own money into this, and they got started. And they set it up as a foundation because they wanted to send a message to the market as well. With the message is, this is a foundation, really non-profit. It is based in Berlin, Germany, which is, if you're in Europe, the most rigid laws when it comes to non-profits is in Germany. And so they really wanted to live up to the highest standards. And they said they're going to make it open source. And you know, when you think open source, you always say, how can I make money? There's examples in IT like Linux and others are used to make money in premium services, etc. And so the foundation was established in November of last year. And at current count, they just had a summer retreat. There's around about 50, 60 employees that are working for the IOTA Foundation. And then there's a network of advisors such as people like myself who are trying to help in certain verticals, our vertical being new mobility. And so when we start looking as innovation consultants at opportunities to help customers, we want to bring them new technology, but we also want to tell them, hey, this is what you can do with this. And so I want to go into a couple of use cases as we go through the presentation. But before I do that, I already mentioned it, but the blockchain on the IOTA side is replaced by what's called a tangle. The tangle is directed through the graph. And so what happens is that the more devices that are on this tangle, the faster it goes. And the way you get a transaction into this tangle is you have to solve 2 transactions in order to submit one. So it's a pay-it-forward system without miners. And so if you think of that now, I solve 2 transactions, I submit one. So I can transact fee-free. Now, some people then say to me, well, Joe, I still have to pay for the electricity of my computer and my node, and yes, you have to pay for some electricity, right? Because there's no mining involved, there's no transaction fee per se. So if you go home tonight and you log on, you can push data across the Tango almost frictionless. Let's call it. It is frictionless. This little energy consumption. And because it's open source, you can go on GitHub, you can download it. There's different solutions out there already, which I'll talk a little bit about, and so you can get cranky. One of the advantages of this Tango is that it allows for offline transactions. Because if you think in the IoT world, an IoT device will not be online 24/7 by 365. So this light will go off during the day, and then at night it goes back on. And let's say this gentleman here is using this light. When he's done after 10 minutes in the IoT world, the bulb would charge him for the 10 minutes that he used the light. Because he's not using the light over there, and I'm not using the light over there. So now you think of these business models. This lamp then has to sync up to the Tango, send the transaction over, and he pays on the other hand. So now you say pay, and we heard that IOTA is a cryptocurrency. The reason there is an IOTA token is when one machine wants to pay the other machine, the value transaction is done by an IOTA token. And the IOTA tokens went online around about the 13th of June last year, and they've been in the top 10 of the cryptos ever since. And obviously that's a game of Hyde being tied to Bitcoin, exchange availability, and other things, but it has done really well from that perspective as well. But you do not have to have a token. So if your machine provides the service of the lamp for free, then all there would be is a transaction, and that doesn't have to be a token exchange. So you do not have to have a token to transact. That's an important question. So now that this base Tango is available, what the IOTA Foundation is now working on is different modules that sit on top of the Tango that provide us in the field with opportunities to build solutions. One of them, which is actually an interesting one we did a virtual hackathon on, is called a flash channel. So a flash channel is an opportunity where, let's use a Chicago example here. I'm going on the expressway on an iPass lane, and instead of using my iPass where I'm running under the reader, a flash channel opens up as I enter the highway, and now my car is collecting the number of miles that I'm driving, and knows that on this stretch of highway, it costs whatever, 0.001 cents. Instead of syncing up every time with the Tango, the flash channel stays open until the car gets off the highway. And when the car gets off the highway, it syncs back up with the Tango. So that's called the flash channel functionality. And we have the winner of the global hackathon is based in Seattle, Washington. So we had a US winner of that functionality. And that's again something that's very unique and very distinct, differently to some of the other protocols that are out there. And one thing, by the way, we're talking. Nick is here from the Chicago Blockchain Project. The community here is so small that we're all getting along with each other, right? So when I say IOTA does this well, this doesn't mean that the other guys are not doing something well. And Ron said there's specialization that's happening now in this field. And IOTA is just very, very focused on IoT. If you come to me and say, can I do smart contracts? No, you can't. Will you be able to do smart contracts? Yes, they're working on it in the roadmap on something along those lines, but there is going to be specialization by these DLT protocols, as we would expect, because that's happened in IT as well. If you look at your website, your email, and your file transfer, those are three very different ways of conducting business on the internet. And I think this will happen with distributed ledger technology as well. So again, the Tango, on top of this sits this flash channel. Another thing that they built, which is actually a very, very big differentiator, and I can talk a little bit about a project we're proposing at the moment, is called masked authenticated messaging. So again, they recognize that there is a need to transact in privacy on a Tango. So a Tango is permissionless, and if I transact, obviously you don't know it's Ron and Joe, but you obviously know my address, and you see his address, and then you see this activity. So if a big player would be starting to do business here, I could see these transactions. What MAM does is it provides you with the option of 3 privacy settings. It can be public, can be restricted or it can be private. When it's a private transaction, you wouldn't even see the transaction between the two of us as other participants in the tangle. If it is restricted, you can see that there is a transaction, but you cannot see the content. And so we're working with a consortium at the moment on car title transfers. So, you know, my car gets totaled, the insurance has to buy it, and as one example. So how do I move that title? And even though IOTA does not have smart contracts, we were able to build a proposal for a prototype using this MAM functionality, where you can start moving, transacting on a public permissionless distributed ledger technology in that way. And those are some of those unique opportunities that that IOTA is providing. Another thing for me, you know, I'm obviously not a recent graduate of college, so for me, when I look at technologies, I always look at it from a perspective, because I'm not technology savvy, as what's the business use, what can I actually do with this? And as I can't read the white paper because I'm not smart enough to understand the math, and as I can't read the code, I always look at what I call validation by proxy. And so when I see validation by proxy in IOTA's case, I would say, for example, last year, Bosch Ventures purchased a significant amount of IOTA tokens. So Bosch, if you don't know, is the #1 automotive tier 1 supplier, but also does household goods and other things. So why does their venture group go out and buy tokens? I don't know, because they're not a publicly traded company, so they don't tell you how many they bought and why they buy it. But clearly, they have an interest in this technology and they want to do something with it. So they went through due diligence, and they looked at this and said, this is something we would like to invest in. The Chicago Connectory, which is the merchandise mart on the 5th floor, is Bosch in 1871's IoT co-working space, 20,000 square feet. They partnered, Chicago Connectory partnered with the IoT Foundation. And so if you ever want to see the tangle in action, you can come there anytime. You will see one of the Bosch XDK sensors, which is the entry-level IoT device that is on the tangle. So you can see the transactions there. And another one is on the data marketplace, which I'll go to in a second. So that's one validation. And again, if you go to Twitter, if you go and you Google this, you'll start seeing some of these names popping up. There's actually, as we speak, a hackathon in Germany with BMW, with VW, and with Bosch, where IOTA technology is being used. It's down in south of Germany. And so, again, I'm not saying that Hyperledger does not have IBM and does not have other customers looking at this, but for the space that I'm in, IoT also has an industrial internet component to it, which is why Bosch is also interested. And industrial internet, if that's the area that you're interested in, means if you assume an assembly line, and I have let's say a cube of aluminum that I turn into the ball pen here or something like that for this pen. As this block goes through the different manufacturing steps, the block would pay every machine for the work that it does. So this is no longer me as a big company putting material in, coming out on the other side. The device itself would start becoming able to pay because they both have a wallet and there's an understanding of, for this exchange of the work, I get this amount of money for this amount of tokens. And so that's one validation. Another validation is that the chief data officer of the VW group, so this is not just VW, but SEA, this is SADS, this is even Lamborghinis, he is on the supervisory board of the IOTA Foundation. The head of Central Europe, Fujitsu, is on the supervisory board of the IOTA Foundation. And last but not least, the third member is a gentleman by the name of Richard Soley. If you're in Internet of Things, he is a standardization guru for the Internet of Things. He has the Industrial Internet Consortium and a group called OMG, which sets standards in interoperability. And this is maybe another key thing for you in my definition. A lot of people always talk about integration. Everything has to be integrated. That's always a very, very difficult task. I always say things have to be interoperable. They have to be able to talk to each other and they have to be able to work together. Because integration requires both sides to set certain standards. Interoperability is really what we should be focusing ourselves on. And so with these kind of power people on the supervisory board, the IOTA Foundation has clearly a lot of people who like them, but it is unfortunately, and this is, I really mean that, it's the only thing I don't like about crypto is there's also a lot of fuss, there's a lot of hate, and there's a lot of dislike. And so clearly, if you go on Twitter, you will also find people who have something not so good to say about IOTA. And I'm not going to comment on every single thing that is out there, but in general terms, again, if you're interested, I can only encourage you to give it a good old college try and play it in a good way. There's companies here in Chicago that are using this technology today in production systems, in POCs. We're doing a monthly meetup in the city where at least every quarter I try to do a community day. So we bring out people that are just building something on it and they can show, hey, look, I'm building this, I'm building this, I'm building that. Because we also want to make sure that we promote the community. There's 1,500 members in the Net Meetup group, and what's the name of it? It's IOTA Beyond Blockchain of Chicago.
Thank you.
And we use the connectory. It has a 250 people capacity. So the last 3 or 4 we sold out. Another validation that I will say that is very Chicago is our friend Rumi Morales. She was the head of CME Ventures. She left towards the end of last year, if I remember correctly, and was looking for her next big thing. And last month, we were had the honor of announcing her at a meetup at the Chicago Connectory as a partner to Outlier Ventures, which is a venture capital group out of London, UK. And they were amongst the first investors in IOTA from an institutional perspective. And she understands the space extremely well. She invested in other DLTs before IOTA when she was at CME. And so we have an opportunity here in Chicago, I think in general, in DLT land. I'm not just saying this because Nick is sitting here, but with the Chicago Blockchain Project, you know, we have a really good aggregator. The Voice of Blockchain is coming up August 24, 25, which I'm helping with the Smart City track. And you know, we're going to have here speak on this topic, the map providers for the automotives. We're going to have Jerry Quant on from the Illinois Autonomous Vehicle Association. All of them are looking at distributed ledger technology, amongst others, IOTA, as an opportunity for creation of business models. And so this validation, as I said, of people using this technology is coming. And this is not an official press release from VW, but there is some stronger rumors around a potential production use case as early as next year. Because all people always ask me, so when will we actually see this in production? And that goes a little bit back to the definition of production, right? If you want to see the Tangle working, again, you come to the Chicago Connectory, you will see the XDK, and there's another use case around data, which I'll go into in a second, which you can also see.
Is the Chicago Connectory in the merchandise market?
Yes, yes. So let's talk about data for a second. And data we can do in multiple different ways. I'll start with the IOTA component of data, because this is another module other than flash channels and mass authenticated messaging. There's a data marketplace. If you go to data.iota.org. I don't care if you're a one-man band or if you're a 5-woman band or if you're General Electric. Everyone has data silos. And even if you're an individual person that has had their own business, by the time you have 5 weeks to open business, you have an email system, you have a website, and you have different data silos. And what the problem is with this, and in general, if you look at the industry with artificial intelligence, machine learning, with big data, and with Internet of Things, why is only 5% of big data being used? Because I do not understand the source of the data. And even more importantly, even if I know the source of the data, I do not know if this data stream has been manipulated, if this data stream is immutable.
And this is where I see DLT as a huge enabler to do all of those things. Because what holds back AI training is I can only train AI with data I know is correct and accurate. But this is the eye of the beholder in a lot of cases, as we know. And so if DLT can really play a key role here, and these data silos that exist within the organization, if you go to, let's use Amazon Joe Rents or you JOCHEN Rents, same person, if they had smart IT, they would know how to merge these two accounts, but they don't because there's two data sets sitting, and years and years ago when I registered, no one remembers. And so DLT could, in a mutable way, look at this and really help. And so we really see a huge opportunity. So IOTA launched a data marketplace, which allows you to put your data into this data lake, and it remains identified as your data, and you decide what this data, what happens with this data. So case in point, at the Chicago Connectory, there's an XDK that is on the Tango, that is on the marketplace. And you can buy in a mock, with a mock wallet, you can buy its open data, temperature, air pressure, humidity, and brightness of the room, if you care about this kind of stuff. But the point is, now you buy this from this sensor. And the sensor sits there in the connectory, and you know that is the temperature at the Chicago Connectory. There's no human or anyone touching the sensor or the data stream of the sensor, so you know it is 67.65 degrees. And when you receive this data, you know it is not tampered with, it's not touched in this world of fake news and the world of fake data. You know this is the accurate data stream. Now, you still have to trust that this is a good sensor, this is not a faking to be an XDK participating in the network. And that's obviously what DLT also takes care of, the trust of the network piece. But that is a very powerful thing. And there, you have to go on the website. I can't remember all the logos, but we're talking about Bosch, Accenture. There's a ton of other energy companies and over 50 participants in this data marketplace that are actively working on learning how they can move the data. Because once you're in this data lake and I subscribe to this data, you can now sell this data. And this is where the economist comes in. Last year's cover had an oil drilling platform, and there was the Facebook logo on it, and the Amazon logo, and the Apple logo, and it said, data is the new oil. So if you think about Facebook as an example, right? They do not create any content themselves. Nevertheless, are they a multi-billion-dollar business for advertisement and everything else? Why? Because you and me, and we no longer, because I actually stopped, are putting your data in there, you put your pictures in there, and as soon as you hit the submit button, the property, intellectual property of that picture you just took of you and grandma at the barbecue belongs to them. And they can sell it to whoever they want, as we saw with the camera situation. So now we're starting to wake up and say, hey, wait a minute, if my data is valuable, and it is truly the new oil, should we not treat it differently than we've been doing it? I just Ubered here, and Uber now has my pickup information, my drop-off information, knows the route that my driver took. And you might say, who cares? But they can use this data and feed this into their AI system because they collected it via their app, so they can trust the source and they can trust the data stream. So if they want to teach their AI how to get to Hyde Park at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on the best route, my route information is now helping feed their back. So they're making money with this data. And then again, they're going on selling it. So if you think of data being the new oil, we're getting down to what the mayor here in Chicago talks about is inclusive economic growth. So he talks about this and he says this is not just Chicago's opportunity, but this is opportunity for the big 40 megacities in the world. And what he means, what I hear him say when he says this is, I see opportunities here. And one opportunity that we're talking about with the Illinois Autonomous Vehicle Association is, you know, we have situations where people say, I don't have a car because I have a job, I don't have a job because I don't have a car. If I would say that every Monday morning here at this corner at Hyde Park, there will be a vehicle that will pull up, it's going to be autonomous, and it's going to drive you to Chicago. It will not be, it will be like a pool service. It won't be at 10:07 coming to your house, but you might have to walk a little bit, but you get there. And I will say that you can ride this bus into downtown Chicago, and I will not charge you any money for the ride. What I want to, however, is I ask for the rights to use the data that you generate and that I generate with you for my business purposes. And so now I can give monetarily free ride sharing to companies. And there's companies already working on models like this, including, by the way, Hyperloop, who hopefully they've already started work on the O'Hare. But they say, I don't want to charge you to get on this thing. I want to make good use of your time. So if Nick has a message with Chicago Normal, I don't know why I'm promoting you, but he has a message to say, and he sits on the Hyperloop for 10, 15 minutes to get to downtown Chicago. I'm going to have him give an opportunity to give a mini TED talk that people can dial in. Right? He has nothing else to do because he sits on the train anyway, or in the car is even worse, right? And in exchange, he gets an opportunity to present here. So there's different ways of monetizing, matching. So let's say Terrence goes to the city, he has experience, he's an experienced school teacher, I just graduated from high school, I can match us and sit him next to me if I choose to let you have my data. And that now goes to me, that's the killer use case for me is the data thing.
Is there a company in India doing that, similar to like what Uber is doing, but it's not centralized like Uber?
Yes.
I don't remember the name.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I can't think of the name either right now, but yes. This is, if I went to you right now and said, here, Nick, here's your data, good luck with it. Where would you go and put your data? This is, all of us are decentralized people. How many of you have a Coinbase account? So why are you using Coinbase if you truly believe in decentralization? I have one too, by the way. If you truly believe in decentralization, why do you let someone centralize and aggregate it? It's completely counterintuitive, right? Why? Because you don't have another way to deal with it. If I were to give you your data and say, Nick, here's your data, Joe, here's your data, where am I going to go with it? And this, to me, is that killer use case that people always ask me, like, give me the one thing that only DLT can do, no one else. This is it to me. And what it would become is this avatar of Joe Renz that has all my data, and then I have these different layers like an onion, right? There's things that my health history is my business and my doctor's business, but the fact that I'm wearing the shirt today, I might not care necessarily about people knowing or not knowing. And my favorite example always is the driver's license, right? So I go to the club, I get ID. Why do they need to know that I'm an organ donor, where I live, how tall I am, how much I weigh? All they need to know is give this guy a drink or not give this guy a drink. And so in my avatar world, there will only be an indicator that says legal age or not legal age. If I can choose to say that I like Bacardi Coke and I'm open to active promotion and I walk on the sidewalk, somebody can send me a push notification that says, hey Joe, we have half off Bacardi Cokes, come on in. When you choose to do that, and then you will ask, what am I getting in exchange? You get half price off, for example. But we really believe that the data part will become something like healthy eating. There was a time when none of us, including me, cared about what we ate. And these days, all of us read the nutrition label and make sure it's not enough of this, not enough of that. And so the data consciousness, I'm even August the 2nd, the state of Illinois asked me to come on to talk a little bit about data. Because if data is treated in oil, it should also be treated significantly differently than the way it has been treated in the past. And these are sometimes little things, and if you haven't read The Blockchain Revolution, I always recommend that as a book for people that are just starting to wrap their heads around it, because, me included, we wake up and we grow up, and it's like, okay, if I want to do a transaction on the bank, I have to have a bank account. I go to the bank, prove to them that it's me. And even I had just a situation with a bank the other day where they need to know their customers. I've been banking with this bank for literally 4 years. And I said, you still don't know who I am? No, we have new regulations, we have to revalidate. And so I have to have a bank account, he has to have a bank account. If I want to send the money, it's most likely going to go to the immediate to this bank. And that costs us $15. And this decentralization is the same with data. When my girls were born, I have to go to the state of Illinois to give me a birth certificate, or Cook County, right? Like, yes, this is how the world works today. That Cook County or the state of Illinois said, here's a child that's born, an American, can have a U.S. passport, can vote, with all the other tricky effects. But you know, why? This is the world that we live in when these rules, regulations were started. But this true centralization is going to really give us a huge opportunity. Data, in our opinion, is at the core of this.
And you say Crook County or Cook County?
Cook County.
Sound like it's
Trying to get me into trouble.
Still the same.
And so data, and this is the data we're talking about today, which is the personal data. But another thing that I find fascinating, and I want to kind of leave you with this before we do. I hope I'm doing my time, by the way. If I go back to this Bosch sensor, it's called an XDK. It sits there and it sells its data. If you think of this, and this is an XDK problem, this is a car problem, this is anything you want to think of. If the machine starts owning itself, so there's no one owning this sensor anymore. There's no one owning the autonomous car anymore. There's not a. I know car ownership is going away, and most of I don't have a car anymore. But I'm even talking about Uber, fleet operator, going away. The car will literally own itself because it's now interoperable with you. And why do I need Uber for my ride today? I know where I'm going. I know where I am. What does Uber do? It finds the driver for me. I can do this with the car directly. It validates that I have payment information, makes the payment happen, and it tells the driver where to go. That's why they're looking at this very aggressively. So now when the car owns itself, it doesn't have to save for the college kids fund. It doesn't have to pay for them. It's not sick. It works 24/7 on its charge. So the total cost of ownership significantly drops, which will lead to lower fares, which goes back to this inclusive economic growth. And so when these machines start owning themselves, the cost of the service that they provide to all of us will be significantly decreased. And this is when people say, you know, how we're going to make the world a better place. That to me is one of those things where I think we can make the world a better place, because people who cannot actively participate in certain things at the moment due to financial constraints will be able, and even if we have to help people, it will come at a cheaper cost. Because all the middlemen are gone. And when this sensor or this car comes to end of life, it will order its replacement at the factory. And yes, it will probably have to have someone to hang it up at the wall. And it might say, hey, Joe, can you hang me up? I'm going to pay you 3 IOTAs for that. And I put a nail in the wall and hang the thing up. Or it will be a robot or someone like that. But when this thing hangs on the wall, and if you look at the array of things that we're doing here in Chicago, some of these other things, when these things run and they can sell the data because it now has monetary value or value of some sort, then this machine-to-machine economy, as they call it, can actually start to blossom into all it can be. Because if you think of all the waste that we're doing today with lights staying on even though no one is in the room, lack of optimization, you know, for all that I know, he and I live next door, we took the same route. What if my Uber app would have said, hey, Nick is going to the same location. Do you mind riding with him? By the way, you have blockchain in common. You can talk about the Voice Blockchain project. All this data is available, but it's not yet interoperable. And so this is where I'm so excited about DLT in general, and why IOTA, in our opinion, is a great answer to the opportunities of the Internet of Things. Making sense?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Pete.
You guys already know DLT, so I don't need to convince you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be spending a Saturday afternoon here, which I, by the way, very much appreciate you coming out. But it's definitely I guarantee you we'll all be thinking about where we were when this whole thing started. And I can speak for myself. It was 2014. I went to a conference at McCormick. Someone explained to me the blockchain, and I didn't understand it because I made the mistake of trying to understand how mining works. And you know, if you're not a technologist, you don't even care about that. It's just something happens. But for now, when I see this as an opportunity for solving business problems, I live in a 500-unit condo building. Imagine how many automatic drills, power drills, are in my building, and how often do you use your power drill? Once a month, let's assume. Imagine you have to pay for it only as you use it. And now you say, okay, this is just crazy talk, Joe. Well, the airlines are only paying for their engines on the planes when the plane is in the air. This is something that's been going on for years. The old days, Rolls-Royce ships the engine goes on the United flight, and we're done, capital expense. Now, if the plane doesn't fly, meaning United doesn't make any money, they're not paying for the engine. And this creeped into other industries, powered air, when you have to clean your desk at the workshop. They now put the compressor on site, and only when you use the pistol for 10 seconds, then you get charged.
So it's like a subscription model?
Yeah. So how can you do that? You cannot do that against, and I used to implement SAP systems, so nothing against SAP, but if your transaction costs you $20, you cannot run a business model like that. It has to be micro payments, micro charges, and you can only do that with DLT technology. It's another one of those what I consider killer use cases. And so the sharing economy, anything with a chip, you can theoretically share. And I only pay for these 4 screws that I put into the wall, and the rest of the time the drill is on someone else's, owns itself all that I care. And what does the drill have to do? It has to pay for its recharging every day or 2 days, depending on its features. And those kind of things, when you look at the data, the ability for us to own our data, and you know, being a European, I always thought that the data privacy laws in Europe were a little bit crazy and were actually a competitive disadvantage. And for those who don't know, for example, if I'm a global Mercedes, even as Mercedes, I cannot move customer data from Germany to Italy. The European privacy law does not permit that, even though it's within the company. And so the GDPR, as it's called, the Data Privacy Act, has 5 core pillars. And one of the core pillars is the right to forget. So now imagine you go back to Google, to Amazon, someone comes to you and says, I, Joe Renz, want to take advantage of my right to forget. That means you have to delete every single record of me. Do you even have an idea where my data is? You don't even know where to look. I have the opportunity to ask you to show me what you're using my data for. Same point. I have the opportunity to ask you to suspend the use of my data temporarily. So imagine whatever, I don't care what business you're in, if I come to you, even the lady who just ran my credit card, if I go to her right now and say, until further notice, you're no longer allowed to use the data that she's collected on me, where would she go and what database and what application to suspend that? If you think of all the algorithms that are Facebook and Google runs on you, Amazon takes your picture every time you order an item online. Why do they do that? If you dispute tomorrow morning that you bought it, is that you on the picture? Oh, yeah, it's me in my pajamas, or hopefully I wear pajamas. But like, this whole data thing is so significant, right? And then I have the right to correct. So let's say, again, my name is J-O-C-H-E-N, but I go by Joe. So if I now go to Walgreens and say, Walgreens, can you please update your records because my data that you're keeping your database is incorrect? Where again would you even go? And I'm not even talking about the cloud, and you don't know where in the cloud your data is, but just from a pure architecture perspective, how many times is my record, is my data being used in your optimizations, in your data, in your big data, in your AI, whatever it is that you're using it. And so, while this is not yet a US regulation, and maybe it will never be, companies that are in the US that do business in Europe have to comply with GDPR, which is another opportunity for DLT, because DLT, again, is perfect for this kind of stuff. To support this, and it's kind of another one of those fuels to the fire of why we think mass adoption is happening, and why Europe is an interesting second place at the moment. Singapore, Asia is leading in DLT land, and surprisingly, the US is a distant third. Even though there's a lot of people working on catching us up here in the States, but you know, there's other folks that are way further along. And this is my last plug for Voices of Blockchain, just because Disruption Joe and his team, including Nick, are doing an awesome job. So they're expecting 5,000 people, and they get here August 24, 25. And I'm not ever bet against Disruption Joe because I've seen him pull things off. When that happens, I think this would make it the biggest of its kind in the US, correct? This kind of consensus was 4,000 and change.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they have announced speakers, they're announcing schedules. It is not inexpensive. I would lie to you. You know, these conferences, big productions cost a lot of money. There is a discount code if you want to leverage it. It's New Mobility Lab, one word. It gives you $100 off. So
What's the price of it?
what is it?
There are different price tiers, but at the moment it's, I believe, $399, and then you have this $100 discount with discount codes.
Was there an early bird rate? Or
There was an early bird rate that was $299,
okay.
so it's gone up since then.
But with the discount, it's the same.
Yeah, but a lot cheaper than Consensus and a lot of other
Yes.
a lot of other events, significantly
Do
less.
you have any press registrations for people that are bloggers or?
Oh yeah.
print
Yeah,
publications?
so we're getting not only just projects, but also a lot of voices such as bloggers,
Okay.
podcasters,
Right.
and a lot of that. And all voices get, based on what they would like, a booth, a discount code of their own where they can put that out there for their subscribers.
Okay.
And so, yeah, we're doing all of that.
All right. That'd be interesting. I got a little startup publication.
Oh, cool.
It's not
Great.
effectively out yet, but it's a print publication.
Okay. Excellent.
I'd be interested.
Yeah, we'll have to exchange information for sure.
And that's the kind of
This is
stuff.
neat what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I
appreciate it.
It's really, really heavyweight information for me. I'm not what I consider to be like these guys in the room. I'm new. I'm a tech person, but still, I think that what you're talking about is, I've heard a lot of people talk about that, you know, there's distributed ledger technology. It doesn't have to be decentralized, and therefore there's an argument against that. And they're saying that, well, we can still use a database because DLT technology is database technology. So we don't have to be decentralized and we can be more effective. And I don't really know where the argument stands at, you know, where that is, but it seems to be an argument case coming up now more and more as guys say, well, here's our rationale for centralization. And they rationalize it in such a way you're like, oh, that makes sense. And what you're saying is completely opposite to that. You're saying something that's like, we can really own, like the car can own itself. I mean, who would think of something? Yeah. Who would be thinking of the car owning itself or the screwdriver owning itself? Nobody's going to be thinking about that. They're going to be thinking, I have to go to Ace Hardware, I have to buy the screwdriver and sit it in the closet and then pay for it and then use it when I need it. And I can never think about just paying for the screws that I put in the wall. Yep. That's unheard of.
And I mean, in fairness too, I mean, obviously I still bank with the big institutions, right? So there is something to be said that, you know, there's Citibank and there's FDIC insurance. So if your money disappeared overnight and you go to the bank and you say, hey, I had $1,000, it's gone, there's a mechanism now that protects you as a consumer if you call whom you're going to call if your wallet is empty because someone hacked you, right? So there's still the human side of it, and clearly we like the fact that we think to know who Citibank is, even though it's a huge organization with thousands of employees. And we like Uber because we think, you know, they validated the driver, which obviously distributed ledger technology will ultimately do as well. But if you still struggle with the whole concept, you have to think that this lamp, this smart light bulb, does not have those preconceptions, right? It doesn't grow up with smart lamp dad saying you have to have a bank account, son, or you know, don't go talk to strangers. The machine doesn't care. And so if I connect this machine to the Tangle and the machine finds another machine that it can do business with to pay for the electricity, they'll start doing business amongst each other. And you know, you might be old enough to remember Terminator 2, right? the machines will start talking to the machines, you know, and there is philosophical conversations about that, you know, is that good or bad for humankind when this light bulb pays for its own electricity and doesn't need you or me anymore. They still need someone to screw it in, right? But there will be a machine one day to do that for it as well. And so humans will take a while to transition, but I think the machine-to-machine economy, again, they don't care about this. They'll have a wallet. Everything with a battery, everything with electricity has a wallet, has a balance, and starts paying the other machine. They'll be happily doing business, you know. And we just have to be conscious of the fact that we as humans have to stay relevant when it comes to this. There's a lot of automation that will be good for us, right? I mean, think of what it did for us, the way we live today. Or you go to countries where it's not the case. We just talked a little bit about Africa, right? If you think of the unbanked or underbanked, there's 3 billion people who don't have a bank account. With DLT, because they have cell phones. I was in Kenya a couple of years ago, and I was surprised in the middle of the bush, and the guy or the gal has a cell phone, right? I can send that person Bitcoin right now, right? I mean, it can really help the world. This is not just about us here in the first world getting better, but you know, it's the technological barrier is very, very much something we can overcome.
But they're already doing that, right? Like they're already doing that. Like if you, with the cell phones, right, different amounts of currency on the cell phone, they're already coming together and connecting their phones and exchanging money that way. So the introduction of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is not going to be that far off.
We just don't know about it in America.
I don't know.
Well, I'm saying there's a few of us that know, but
Yeah.
I'm saying in America we don't know that's happening, like in that space over there.
There's like cell phones and stuff, like it's like Facebook, all that stuff, Instagram is like connecting us in ways like never before. So it's like, it's not far-fetched to think that, you know, there's people that are using cryptocurrency. Yeah, out in the bush, like they're totally doing that already.
They're more advanced than mine.
Joe, I have a question. Like, so in your example of the power drill, like how did those economics ever work? Like it's two people. Like I can go rent a power drill for $10 right now. I don't know if that $10 is the right number, but some nominal amount of money. And in order to make everything have a wall, and for me, and I'm moderately sophisticated as far as crypto technology and stuff, and to teach me how to use this new system, like how is that going to work? Like how is that ever going to make economic sense? Because the problem with 500 people having 500 robots isn't that you can't rent them today. It's something else, right?
That's what
your parents gave you drill for a gift. So, you know, the drill manufacturers really want everybody to have a drill closet. It's not that there's no market for you to drill. So it sounds to me just like there's a lot of potential, but there's still not a clear sense of the problem.
Yeah. What if it was like Wow Wow? Wow Wow has the cubby hole now. You go and you pick up your food in the little cubby hole. What if it was like the Amazon cubby hole you see at Block 37? You go get the screwdriver from a little box, and you get it back in that box, and everybody in civilized downtown can go do that.
I'm not saying that there's not a market for people to rent assets.
Right.
Like you shouldn't have to buy every asset you need. My question has to do with like, why is distributed ledger technology better than my registration for the drill going into a database owned by Home Depot? Because Home Depot is going to give me a better price on this machine.
Okay, so I'll have a couple answers. Let's start with the Home Depot piece. If the drill owns itself, the supply chain will be the drill to the factory and the shipping part. So Bosch makes the power drill in an existing factory. It gets picked up by UPS, delivered to the location of the drill, and then the drill is there. So there's no more Home Depot. There's no more distributor that Home Depot buys from, and mass distributors and all. So all these people that are in the value chain all make money. So it's no longer a $10 rental thing. It's a $5, $1, because the economics are completely different. because all the people that make a living to get that drill to Home Depot also have to pay for retirement, have to pay for college. Kids are sick and a higher cost of total ownership. The drill itself, when you say how you use it, they say you're a sophisticated crypto user, right? That to me is like the Uberization of things, where I don't want to care about. Let me back up. In my iPhone, which this thing everyone cares, the address was in here that I have to be here at 2 o'clock. It is all of us in this room by tonight. We started to write an app that says, if I have an appointment, make sure there's a car waiting outside. And all I need to have is an alert to say, Joe, you have to go now, based on traffic situation, to be there by 2 o'clock. Why do I, as a human, have to go into Uber, say, here's where I want to go, see what the traffic is like, and know that I have to call my Uber at 1:30 to be here at 2 o'clock? This is all like the absolute lowest hanging fruit, which I see as the user experience improves. So my point is, you will not know how the drill is charging you for its service. And the fact that you need it, I think the reason to go back why people have it other than getting gifted is if I have it in my house, I can go to the closet and I grab it and I drill the hole. If I have to go to Home Depot first and pick it up, and this is why the Amazon boxes, which I know you see Whole Foods now. Why does Amazon buy Whole Foods? So now they have all these boxes in every Whole Foods where you have to go anyway, because most of us want to buy fresh groceries, and I'm in Whole Foods anyway. Now I can get the drill from my Amazon box, drill my hole, put it back in the box, and then someone picks it up. So there's still opportunities, obviously, to make this faster and cheaper, but these use cases, go back to the airplane engine, go back to the compressed air. This pay only as you use it is car ownership. I don't have a car anymore. I only pay for a car. I had a zip card today, could go shopping, and now I came down here. I only pay for the car, for insurance, for gas, when I actually used it, when my butt was in the vehicle. And all the other 6.5 days this week, I have zero costs. And this is, for us, this mega trend that we think will continue. Okay, you cannot go all the way to the chair.
But so what you're saying makes sense, but it sounds like there's two different ideas. Like one is there's this huge rental economy. People no longer have to own assets that they don't use. You don't have to drill the car or whatever because you can rent it. And that has to do with the friction of transactions going down. Find someone who will rent it. But that's a lot different than distributed ledger technology. When you talk about going to Uber or to Zip, you're going to a centralized database, and you're saying, I would like Uber to get me from there. And so the thing that I'm struggling with is you've got this really nice idea about economic inclusion having to do with the ease of renting assets. And then you have this economic problem of big companies have big databases, and they make things relatively inexpensive to do. And so figuring out how to make, the drill rental compete with Home Depot seems like, impossible.
So in my opinion,
the picture a little bit different. What if we have it where someone actually owns that drill, someone who could afford to buy a drill, everything, 500 people in that building.
Right. So basically, you've just segmented Home Depot's business. I just bought a little bit of Home Depot's stock, the drill selling stock, and it's for a dividend. Okay.
And it could be a community or a cooperative that does that. So what if it's a co-op that does that? The building owns a co-op. They say for all of the members, we buy the drill, and then we get the residual or whatever fee, like a miner or whatever, for mining the drill or something. I'm just giving another flip side, like what she's saying. Think about it differently.
I mean, that provides a problem for that solution. Some solution you're saying is what's wrong here?
I know there's potential gains, there's benefits and negative side effects as far as the shared economy. But with the shared economy, the initial purpose of it is to provide access to resources to individuals that wouldn't necessarily be able to afford certain stuff. So we could use the drill example. instead of you have to hang up some pictures. Instead of going out to Sears or wherever store that you go to buy a drill, you can rent it. And you're renting the drill, you participate in the economy, where the actual owner of the drill receives money. You don't have to pay the $200 or whatever to buy a drill. You can pay $20 or $10, or however much it costs, and you kind of truncate the amount of money that you spend. And a great example is that is Uber and Lyft. So I know there's controversy among the taxi drivers in the world because they feel like it undercuts them. But because of Lyft and Uber, it allows for people to be able to get rides to wherever they need to go more cost efficient. So I used to take taxis all the time. And I worked downtown because I had to go to like law firms and things of that nature. But where I currently work now, everyone use Uber or Lyft because it's more economical, and you're paying less money, but there's more people able to participate in the economy. That's the basis of distributed ledger technology. It decentralizes everything. It gets people involved. There are negative side effects of it, but then there's the potential of empowerment.
Because the taxi driver won't all go to the same. Every taxi driver won't go to a neighborhood that you might want to go to.
Or that you live in, and that's
you live in.
You live in, and you can service that neighborhood.
My whole point was the sharing economy is cool. Uber is cool. Being able to rent the drill rather than buy the drill is awesome. Those are not distributed ledger problems. There's no trust issue if you're solving.
And that's
now your data is no longer being distributed.
That's true.
And that's my second point. And that's my second point.
Way to phrase the question. Your cost that you're going to spend is going to be less at Home Depot, but you're also going to give up this hidden cost of your data being in Home Depot's.
Well, the avatar situation is no outline. The avatar, the data, we are in control of the data, and we know how it's being used. So that empowerment and that freedom of, okay, I know they're making money on my data, but I already know that. I don't know what the hell Google's doing. I don't know what Facebook has done. I have no clue, and they've gotten rich off of it, like what you said about the photo. At least I know that the hardware drill scenario is going to be a scenario where I'm enabling them to make the money off of that. I am doing it.
What if, for example, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
What if, for example, for the drill, you're talking about walking into a store and getting a drill? What if you provided a service to someone else, and then that value, that service is closer to the distributed ledger? And then you essentially walk into the store, and you pick the drill up, and you just walk out with it. Okay? The distributed ledger recognizes that you have a value to offset whatever it is you're taking with you, and then you have the choice of either keeping it, provided there's sufficient value to purchase it, or you can take it back. And if you take it back, then your the drill with using machine learning will recognize the amount of time that you actually use it and only charge you for that value to drop it back off. So think about, I think the thing that's missing is the value part. So the ledger has the ability to take a look and see and authenticate that you have a right to do something, you have a value that's there. And the benefit of the ledger is that once it's there, it can't be changed. You know, there's lots of different ways to figure that out. But it's hanging on a myrtle tree, and you can take a look and there's your transaction and show that you have value. If you want to walk in and pick up a cup of coffee in the coffee shop, it's much of the same way on the ledger, and that value that you have is there. You just walk in, you pick up a cup of coffee, and you walk out. So if you think of it maybe in those terms, if you think of it more in terms of the ability to move freely without some of the current restraints we have, and no one being able to go in and say that you don't have value, or to take your value away from you, or share your information without your proof. That's some of the benefits that we look at. But to one of the things that I think about is that with machine learning, with overlay, and then we think about AI as well. That's a huge amount of data. So I was at a builder developer meeting last week, and one of the guys was there, and he said that, you know, the thing about the distributed ledger is that it's like Ferrari, but it's driving on dirt roads. So when we talk about this, can you just talk a little bit about scalability, number one, and then also secondly, about data storage? Because that's a huge amount of data. There are going to be certain constraints that prevent DLT from where potentially it will go. But are there any companies that are working on that that are interesting right now in the space? And if I didn't answer the question, if I wasn't helpful with the drill, just keep going.
You had raised your hand a couple of times. Do you
Actually, this one, no. It's more of a philosophical question. I'm curious about. But,
Yeah, please ask it. Yeah, please.
So before I go here, you know, because I still feel like you're hanging there on why the DLT is. Forget the tech. You have to get out of $10, and you have to get down to 0.01 cents per home. When you go into the place where your current SAP or whatever system you're using, you don't want to economically afford to drill just the whole hole. And when you think of it that way, no one wants to buy a $10 hole. If you really go down to the level where it's no longer sustainable in our current system, that's where the killer use case comes back to DLT. When you can make machine-to-machine microtransactions happen, and that hopefully helps. On the so the first thing is, and I can send you a slide if you shoot me, or you can find it online as well. But the advantage of the Tangle versus other approaches to distributed ledger technology is that the more devices that are on the Tangle, the more potent it becomes, the more performant it becomes. And so we actually hope to see more and more devices to come on, so it actually goes faster and faster. So the Ferrari on the dirt road slowly but surely will get the pavement it needs to go as fast as it possibly can. At the same time, is the footprint that you have to have in order to participate in the Tangle as small as a full node considered a Raspberry Pi. There's a company here in Chicago called Sonic Messenger who has shown this at Community Day. Last time we did one, they're running a full node on a Raspberry Pi. So very, very small footprint. So that way, more nodes are in the system, the faster it goes, the faster the validations of the transactions goes, etc. And there's illustrations that you can see the Tangle actually in action, how the transactions get confirmed. And this goes now beyond my technical understanding of how exactly it technically works, but you can watch it, and it's quite interesting to see.
So each individual node then within the network would have, I'm assuming some type of program or some type of container that containerizes some stuff. So they each talk, they be able to communicate with one another on the same level, right?
Yep.
Okay. So how does that,
But it's truly decentralized. This goes back to the two transaction validation. So if I sit here with my box and we got some blocks, I need to do these two validations. So even though this room is a Tangle, I only do these two connections to these two nodes before I submit my transaction. So I don't need to go and let all of you know. I'm only going to the next two connections, if that makes sense. And this is where I'm starting to get into very thin ice because I don't understand how it technically works. Yeah.
So that would kind of address the storage issue because it's
correct.
And then some of the speed and scalability.
Yeah. And there's, we're talking in general terms, transactions per second, we're talking single digit, double digits. And in lab situations, IOTA got north of 1,000. And so there's, the more adoption there will be, the faster it goes, And then it will also depend, sometimes it goes fast, sometimes it does not go as fast. But we're talking in the thousands, so it's definitely starting to scale. Now, to give you a frame of reference, Visa has 20,000 transactions a second. So when you hear Visa does not look at blockchain, first of all, they do look at it. But secondly, they have built infrastructure over many years to run 20,000 transactions a second. So we're a long way away from running the Visa payment system on it. But if you also think back to why they have to build this infrastructure, and again, most of my examples are car related, but if I have an autonomous vehicle and I go on Lakeshore Drive and I drive 60 miles an hour, I cannot take what my camera sees, the data my camera sees, bring it into the vehicle, process it, say there's a child on the street, send it to Munich, Germany, because I'm driving a BMW. Munich processes the data on a mainframe, says, child, bad news, you should brake, go back to the United States, shoot back to the car, say, car, you should brake, right? My point is, we're talking about the edge, we're talking about fog computing, things have to happen in real time right there and then. And so for scalability, we have to be peerless, we have to be peer-to-peer. It has to be the car has to decide for itself with vehicle-to-vehicle, vehicle infrastructure communication. There's a child on the street, I have to brake right now.
So another vehicle tells that other car,
for example,
that I already see the child, you're
exactly.
behind me, I'm
Exactly.
sharing this data.
Exactly. Yes. Or black ice, or potholes. If you think about, your braking, by the way, works exactly like that. If you drive down Lakeshore Drive and there's something that you need to know, like a child on the street, I guarantee you see it. But if I ask you how many trees were along the street, you don't know because you don't care. Your brain filters all this stuff out. If I'm a camera in the car, I record everything, and then I need to say, tree. Yes, this is a tree. Is it relevant? No. But at the very beginning, when this started, we took all this data, terabytes of data of a vehicle, and then it becomes big data. And then what do? I know that there's a tree on Lakeshore Drive because all of us drive there every day. So I don't need to reconfirm for the 500 million time that there's a tree. But the kid is a one-in-a-lifetime thing that this way has happened. So again, this is, I think, where DLT can show this.
I've been trying to understand how something like IOTA, using IOTA to pay for something, will work practically for a business. I'm trying to control even my costs, since it's still going to be kind of pegged against the US dollar. And I assume some speculators are hoping that prices will skyrocket. So, but the electricity that costs me a fraction of a day may be the equivalent, maybe paying $1,000 in USD more for that a month from now. So how do I, as a business, contemplate without me just if I'm faced with that uncertainty?
Great question, and I think this, other than the technological fact that we're in beta with all of DLT, that is the number one concern. And there's no good answer yet. If you think back to how it started with normal currencies before the gold standard, the US dollars would fluctuate and the Deutsche Mark and all the liras and everything else. Then there was a gold standard to peg it, so it didn't move as much anymore than the currencies got these bands. So it's more predictable. The euro helped the European Union to address this issue quite a bit because they had currency fluctuations. And it still happens today. I used to work for Computer Associates. Whenever we announced the street, we always had millions of dollars in currency fluctuations because the euro was stronger, the dollar was weaker, but at a much lower band. It was not 20% on a day or something like it is in crypto. And the only answer for you today that I can give you is that you would have to stay within the currency that you transact in. So if it's IOTA, you receive IOTA as in return for the business that you do, and you do not exchange it. You just keep it in IOTA, and you find a business model where you can receive IOTA and then pay the service that you need to pay for, go back into electricity or office space in IOTA as well. But as soon as you go through exchanges to Bitcoins or Ethereum or US dollar, you're exposed to that. There's no good answer anymore.
Which is the issue. Like you have currency separation too. You have here in Zimbabwe, Venezuela, you got to pay electricity currencies.
Yes.
Well, I mean, but with the difference with these currencies, you got people acting, speculating, hoping. You have you have a limited amount of IOTA, and you have people, large companies that buy massive amounts of it. And then the spikes we saw were largely driven by China. But people with massive resources, like people can't influence the price. You can influence the price of the dollar, but not like you can do. My business is using.
Well, you probably could with all of this.
Well,
I think we're such an early stage because inevitability of currency.
Well, I'm talking
It's not wrong.
well, I'm just going to give a realistic case today. Yeah, the dollar fluctuates. If I start a business, I'm not worried about going out of business because the value of the dollar fluctuates. But if I pitch my business to the value, say like if I did Bitcoin, and now I did transactions with Bitcoin. For whatever reason, some dispute, somebody says, give me a refund. I might be refunding you $50,000 more than what you paid. So it's, you know, it's not as simple as, hey, you got currency too. It's a little different. So, I mean, I would be much more comfortable sticking to the USD and handling those little fluctuations.
Yeah.
It's there are other companies of cryptos, tokens that are working on the solutions to these problems. Celsius Network comes to mind, is one of them, and they work with crypto that works with that has custodial accounting sector. So they're
What's the name of that company?
Celsius Network, but now with IOTA, with Bitcoin, or Ethereum. It's all about knowing more about the overall crypto space instead of just one or two. Because you're going to have multiple use cases across the board. And like Celsius Network is definitely one of them that is addressing that. They actually have ICOs putting their money with them because they're paying them a daily interest on the money that's held in their wallet, for example. And there are other situations where you can put your crypto up and get fiat loan against your crypto. You know, just a third of the amount that's there or whatever. And that fiat can help you with your expenses and things. And crypto is fluctuating on, you know, how it really goes up. And you can benefit from that without having sold off or what have you. So it's important to go to these type of meetings and other meetings where you get to hear more of what is really happening in the overall and technology, blockchain, or just really other tokens, coins, etc. Because there is way more than we keep up with information on.
Yep.
It's happening way too fast.
I have a quick question. I mean, I guess it's less technical, but so you said eventually the drill will run itself. I wouldn't figure that would require a whole lot of legal initiative for, I don't know if there's such things like machine rights, like the drill owns itself and say I'm bad at drilling or it refuses to work with me because I'm drilling into concrete all the time and it just doesn't want to. Yeah, then do I sue the drill? I mean, like, I was just wondering if there is any sort of idea where, like, okay, we treat this as, does it have legal status in the future? Like, can, you know, donate to political campaigns or like grow a robot? I don't know.
Yeah, what happens to the excess money? After it's electricity bill, it's just money.
It wouldn't have excess money, it would drop the price of its service, which goes back to the economic growth.
So the drill is a non-profit organization, basically. Zero-based budget.
So it's a very good question, and I'm not a policymaker, but I can give you a real-life example. So there's Hanson Robotics in Hong Kong built.
What's the name of that?
Hanson, Hanson. They built a artificial intelligence human-like robot called Sophia. And I had the pleasure of meeting her a couple of times. And it's very, very surreal because it's very, very advanced AI. The guys who do it are amazing. And so she travels around the world. She speaks at conferences now. Obviously, she has a support team with her, but one of them is someone has to carry her to the exhibition site so she can actually speak. She doesn't have legs yet, but she has arms now. And Saudi Arabia, out of all the countries in the world where up until very recently women were allowed to drive and they were watching movies in theaters, actually made her a citizen. And initially you're like, hey, this is pretty crazy, why would they do that? And then I talked to someone here in Chicago and he said, look, they want to tax her. So now that she's a citizen, they can send her a text bill and say, hey, you know, you're making on your speaking engagements $100,000 a year. By the way, you know, as a citizen of Saudi Arabia, you should help. So this whole machine-to-machine economy will, you know, Howard Tolman always talks about this Airbnb and with Uber and everything else. The pace of technology is so fast that our legislative bodies have a very, very hard time keeping up. So what usually happens is like Airbnb. they go and do it, then all of a sudden City of Chicago sees its income on taxes decline, on hotel stays. They scratch their heads and say, wait a minute, everyone stays at Airbnb. You don't pay taxes, there's an amusement tax when someone stays at your house. What we're going to do is make it illegal. They did it with Uber, they did it with Lyft, right? And so these knee-jerk reactions will happen before, and we'll see this in our lifetime. I am convinced, But Sophia is the best and closest example I have at the moment when it comes to taxation. Then who do you sue? Yeah, it's ultimately, I think it will be that you find a hole in the wall and someone else will do it. You interacting with the drill is probably why this won't be the issue, but in general terms, machine-to-machine economy disputes. There's a guy here in Chicago, Wolf, he's going to speak at Voice of Chicago. He looks at just settlement disputes and smart contracts, for example. Right? Because today, he says, like, someone wants a refund, he says, no, the goods will ship. There is a court that will decide if he's right or she's right. How do we do that in cyber crypto land, right? So he's thinking about things like that. And
what's the name of that presentation?
What's his company called?
It's a good question. I just saw him talk 2 nights ago, so I should probably know this.
The first name is Wolf, W-U-L-F. I think one F, and then Kaal, K-A-A-L. And then my friend, Professor Woka, who teaches at Northwestern, he always tells his audience that today it's the slowest day of change that we will experience for the rest of our lives, which, me being in technology, scares me a little bit. I have little kids, and I'm thinking, I have a hard time keeping up with this, and I do. I can only imagine if this is the slowest day today, what tomorrow will be like. But I also am a big believer in, that's why I have little kids, that humankind has always found a way to stay relevant and to persevere, So I think we're in for a run. But the only thing I will say is, if you sit here today and say, this is all a bunch of bullshit, this is never going to happen, Google Boston Dynamics when you get home and watch one of their robots. They do backflips now, they open doors, and I assume this is at least 5 years ago, meaning what our military has as, look at drones. There are autonomous vehicles in the air that fly into a foreign country and make life or death decisions. They have bullets now that make life or death decisions. Someone says, knock out Joe Renz, and they see the collateral damage would be that all of you guys are gone as well. The bullet will decide to abort the mission. I mean, this is the level, that's the level that we're at, right? People say, well, what if someone puts a hit out on Nick? Or he sits here, all of a sudden he pops back. How do you know who's actually drone, right? I mean, I don't know.
Couldn't that happen to the blockchain? Like, if you're carrying, somebody can easily do that?
I mean, you too young probably remember Terminator 2, but the machines take over. And the machines take over because they realize that the only risk that they have is that humans turn off the power of electricity. Now, I don't think we would ever agree that the world will turn off power because we can't even agree in Washington, not to mention trade in Europe and the US. But if the electricity would go, the machines could not communicate anymore. Right? That's one of the lifelines which we have control over. Yes.
You know, you have to watch Terminator now. You just watch Westworld, by the way. And Westworld season 2.
Westworld? Yeah. I haven't not seen it yet.
Yeah, you get a kick out of it. And just to add to Sophia, Sophia had the ICO, initial coin offering. So this AI, she has a business in UI, and she had a company that did an initial coin offering as a crypto. And their business is to create other AI for business, for businesses to implement AI in their business.
Yep.
And it's real. It's literally, that's the deal. Saudi Arabia is her home. She gets taxed because she has a business, and the business is creating more AI. And it's coming, whether people are ready for it or not. In the rest of the world, it's about that.
Is that a cable show?
Yeah. Yeah, look at the Google thing. I don't know what it's called that makes reservations. calls up the restaurant. You pick up the phone, you don't know this is a machine talking to people. I mean, it is that crazy these days. Thank you very much. Saturday afternoon, which now turns into a nice place.
Yeah. Can we get some pictures with you guys?
Yeah.
And thank you all so much for coming out. Please sign in. If not, we'll definitely keep in touch with you about our August meetup. It will not be on August 24th and 25th. Also, feel free to network with one another. Introduce yourself. You know, everybody's here, right in the south side of Chicago. Exchange business cards.
Actually, I'll get that.